Welcome to today's video where we'll be diving into a case study in which a bank is replacing an aging financial system. This is a case study that I wrote myself for the purpose of recording this video. So I'll go through the case study itself and then answer the 5 questions that I prepared for this exercise. Let's get started. Alright, so ABC Bank is planning the overhaul of their aging financial system as more and more vulnerabilities are being identified on the used technology stack. The bank has already purchased a new software developed by the company TechPro and are planning to fully decommission the previous solution within 2 years. It will not be a simple task as the financial system is highly integrated within the ABC Bank ecosystem, with more than 20 integrations to other software. There are also many different teams who are using the system for various purposes such as opening new accounts, transferring funds, managing investments and even making real-time transactions on the trade market. Needless to say, this system is critical to the ABC Bank business and any downtime will have a large impact. Alright, and then you are the project manager working for TechPro, who has been assigned to deliver the project with a team of consultants, solution architect and trainer. You will be working closely with the project manager of ABC Bank and communicate to various stakeholders within the bank, such as SMEs, subject matter experts, business analysts, testers, end users, IT team, project sponsors, and executive sponsors. Both TechPro's and ABC Bank's management teams have made it clear to you that the success of this project is critical for the reputation of both companies. Alright, and here are the 5 questions. What are the main risks on this project? What methodology would you follow to deliver this project efficiently? How would you handle the project communication? What tools would you use to ensure a smooth delivery? And how would you approach the go-live phase? If you want to try to answer these questions yourself, go ahead and pause the video and then compare the results with what I'm about to say. Alright, so let's go through these questions one by one. And keep in mind, these are my answers, so if you have any other thoughts, just let me know. The first question was, what are the main risks on this project? I personally came up with 4, and the first one was downtime. So I think they made it really clear that they want as low downtime as possible throughout the project implementation. They also said that it was critical to the project success and it would be detrimental to both companies if there were elongated downtime. And what that means is up for interpretation because some systems run 24/7, so what is downtime? But having had some personal experience working with banks, I can already say that most systems don't run 24/7. Typically on weekends there are some downtime periods that are planned. So it's fair to assume that what downtime means is typically during business hours, and over the weekend there are not that many business hours. The second risk I've listed is delays. This project has a 2-year deadline, which might seem like a lot, but with 20 plus integrations and that many stakeholders, it actually could end up being very tight. So this project will have to be tightly managed if we want to have a chance of achieving the 2-year deadline. The third risk I'm noting is misalignment between stakeholders. With so many different stakeholders that are using their application in different ways, there are a lot of opportunities for them to not be aligned on what they want and for having their requirements conflict with each other. There's no indication in the case study that the stakeholders have already aligned together prior to starting the project, so we should simply assume that they're not aligned yet and there will be a lot of work to do in order to gain alignment from everybody. And the challenge with that is like initially they might seem aligned, but later on when they're actually seeing the platform and testing the solution, that's where we might find out that what they asked for was actually not what they needed. And then finally, fourth point, I'm listing technology. And it's simply because we're implementing a new software solution with so many different integrations. And while there is no detail about what technology we'll be using, I think it's fair to assume that we may run into situations where softwares reach their limitations. How we handle and manage all the risks is another story, but at least we identified them. Alright, and then the second question was, what methodology would you follow to deliver this project efficiently? So here I think, considering the size and the complexity of the overall project, I would want to break it down to smaller pieces as much as possible. So I would want to run this as a multi-phase approach and go live with a smaller chunk of work at a time. The perfect example is the multiple integrations. There must be a way to separate them into smaller groups and go live with each group at a time, so maybe 2 or 3 at a time. That way, if something goes wrong, it only impacts the related business users. And I'd want to follow this approach for the multiple user groups and applications that are in the system. In terms of actual methodology, I would start with waterfall. And the reason for that is because we have a clear scope, we know what we have to do, and we have a deadline. So we need a strong plan to deliver this. But I would add a little bit of agile to it. For instance, we have all of these integrations to deliver. So maybe the configuration and development portion of the applications and the integrations can be an iterative approach. There might be areas where we don't fully have to deliver certain integrations in order to make the solution work for some of the applications. Or we know maybe that one of the business group is going live much later. So it's up to us when we deliver the integration. That way we can be a little bit more flexible about when those integrations would be delivered and also learn from the mistakes and issues that we face during the early phases of those first integrations integrations and applied the learnings to the later ones. The third question is, how would you handle the project communication? With so many stakeholders between our own team and the bank, communication is going to be really important here. So my recommendation is first to have weekly status meetings. I would like to have at least one where there is everybody on the project. So all the different teams, all the different people responsible for the different aspects of the implementation, being the applications, integrations, everyone. And the reason for that is I want everybody to know how we're progressing throughout the implementation. It doesn't have to be a long meeting, it just needs to be clear enough that they understand if they have something to do now. And similarly, I would want to send a report every week to the main stakeholders to let them know how we're doing on the project. And a report is already a great place to raise flags on timeline, budget and scope, and let everybody know if there is a problem. On top of those weekly meetings, we'll need a lot more technical meetings to talk with the different teams about their requirements. I would also want to have PM touch points, so just one-on-ones with the other project manager to make sure we align on all those items. And considering the size of the project, I would highly recommend that you plan steering committee meetings. So these meetings are really the place where all the main stakeholders, so think about project sponsors, executive sponsors, meet and discuss the different aspects of the project. And all they need is a very high-level overview of where we stand in order to make tactical and strategic decisions. And there is so much more we can say about the communication in general on the project to the stakeholders. And if you're interested to learn more about this specific topic, I actually made a video on this, so go check it out. Alright, the fourth question is, what tools would you use to ensure a smooth delivery? The first one I've listed is not really a tool, it's more like an approach. I recommend to follow a train-the-trainer approach for this project. So what does that mean? It means as the vendor, we'll not train the end users directly. We'll train the SMEs and the identified champions of the customer in order for them in turn to go train their end users. And I think it's better that way because they will have a lot of end users and they will have to deliver a lot of training. And it's better that they tailor their own training to their branding, their standard, and they can record it and put it in some learning platform. The second tool that I'm listing is a RACI matrix. With so many stakeholders in play, I strongly suggest that we align with the customer project manager on who is responsible for what. And a great tool to do that is a RACI matrix. It basically is a big table that is going to say for each task who is going to be responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. The third tool I would use is a RAID log. It stands for Risk, Action, Issues, and Decisions. It's just an administrative tool to keep track of the main items on the project. So all the risks we mentioned previously would be listed in the risk register in the RAID log. Similarly for all your actions, issues, and decisions on your project. And then the final tool that I would use is a lessons learned document. So because I suggested to go with a multi-phase approach, at the end of each phase, we should run a lessons learned session. The lessons learned session is basically getting feedback from everybody on how we did in order to improve for the next time. This is one of the topics that I've been thinking to do a video on, so let me know if you're interested. And then the last question, how would you approach the go live phase? This question is a bit tricky because the customer wants to avoid downtime. So the first thing we need to do in order to avoid downtime during business hours is to do it outside of business hours. So be prepared to work on weekends. And weekend seems long, but where you're implementing solutions, it's actually not that much time. So here's another reason why we should go with a multi-phase approach in order to reduce the deployment time for each deployment. And in order to prepare for each one of these deployments, we'll have to come up with a deployment plan. The deployment plan is typically a document that lists the activities that need to happen during the deployment in increments of 15 or 30 minutes. My recommendation is that it includes milestones on which the project managers, so either us or the customer, would send some status emails, so the main stakeholders can keep track on how the deployment is going. In that plan, we should have a time and date of no return. And past that point, we have no choice but to go live. Think about it like taking an exit on the highway. You have up until that point to actually exit the highway. Past that point, it's too late. Any deployment should also include a rollback plan. And the rollback plan is basically a plan to go back from the previous solution if anything goes wrong. That is, if it's possible, because it's not always possible to have a rollback plan. And if there is such a plan, it needs to be tested before you actually go and deploy the solution. In order to account for the increased risk, we need to make sure that people are ready to support this application day one, because there will likely be issues to handle. So on day one, I would just make sure that people are aware, or maybe increase the number of people to be ready to handle issues. And then finally, the go live should include a communication plan. This is typically handled by the customer, so here ABC Bank. And the plan should include what emails are being sent and when during the deployment to the end users or the different stakeholders of the project. So here you have it. This was my take on this case study. I hope it makes sense and you enjoyed going through this together. And if you did the case study, please let me know how different your answers were to mine in the comment section down below. And as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe. These things really help. Merci and au revoir.